You know my guest today from THV 11's In the Garden. He's the landscape designer, Mr. Chris Olsen. I call him a lifestyle expert.
I've been called worse.
Chris is more than a local gardener in Arkansas. He is a creative businessman with lots of irons in the fire. In addition to his gardening and landscape business in Little Rock Botanica Gardens and his North Little Rock home and garden center, Plantopia, he is a decorator, author, and historic building preservationist, and a wordsmith. I think you made all those words up.
I make a lot of words.
Yes, preservationist. Chris has saved, preserved, and opened his historical home, the Edgemont House, in North Little Rock, Arkansas, to brides and businesses for public use. I can't wait to talk with him about his restoration project of Justin Matthew Jr.'s 1927 Spanish colonial-style home in the historic Park Hill neighborhood. It is a pleasure to welcome to the table the talented, creative, lifestyle expert, risk taker, always working, Mr. Chris Olsen. Or is that not true? Are you not always working?
6 days a week.
I bet, really. No, 7. I bet you really work 7.
7 is chore day, so technically that probably is working.
So if you look at your life, I noticed, along with working hard, being passionate about plants, I think you're a risk taker.
I am a risk taker.
Yeah. You started Botanica Gardens, Plantopia, became a television personality, lifestyle expert, invested in a large restoration project of the historical Edgemont home. All of those startups take a lot of guts. I know big, bold steps can keep you up at night. Which one of these kept you up the most?
The most? Probably Plantopia, actually.
What? That's not the one I would have guessed.
Well, you probably would have guessed Edgemont House.
Yes.
Okay, the thing is, in 2015, I opened Plantopia and did that. Soon afterwards, in 2016, I did the Edgemont House. So technically, I was doing both of them at the same time, so they could override each other.
What was the deal with? Why was the Plantopia keeping you up?
Because I didn't realize I was already working 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. So now you opened another business, which only took more of your time and worries, because you know how it is. It's money. It's everything that's involved with that. And I didn't realize how much work it was going to take.
Did you buy an existing garden center?
Well, it used to be called Lakewood Gardens, and it was closed, I don't know, probably 5 or so years. And the funny thing about it was, about a year earlier, I looked at it, maybe a year and a half earlier, I looked at it with the Matthews and was thinking of it, and then decided I didn't hear back from them. So I thought that was God's will. And that was it. And then Norman Clifton bought it from the Matthews. He's a big real estate guy in North Little Rock. Long story short, it was for sale again. When after he bought it, it had sold on. I said, that's another sign from God. I'm not supposed to have it. Didn't think twice about it after I drove by it. Then he called me like 3 months later and says, Chris, you've got to open a nursery here. I go, you sold it. He goes, no, I fell through. He goes, you are going to buy this.
Did he make a good deal, I hope?
I leased it from him originally, the building. And then about 2 years later, I bought it from him.
You had no idea that you were going to eventually end up buying one of his family members' homes.
Oh, no idea. Wasn't even looking for another home.
So for people who didn't catch the intro, you ended up in 2015, you bought Plantopia from, let's see, is that Charles Matthews? No, that'd be from, which Matthews did you buy that from? From General Properties. Which is a Matthews family business. And then a year later, you don't even realize it, but you fall in love with a house that happens to be Justin Matthews Jr.'s house that was built in 1927.
Yeah. It's all interconnected somehow.
Maybe y'all knew each other in life before.
I don't know, but it all worked out.
When did the seed of entrepreneurship first begin for you?
You know, I have always been that way. I started in Connecticut when I was a little kid. My dad had a very stressful job. He was a stockbroker and an actuary and all that. So his way to relieve his stress was a garden. So he created our whole backyard was a garden, orchard and everything. So
we had
a big backyard.
In Connecticut, you had a big backyard?
Yeah, we had a big backyard. Okay. I mean, we used to ride the station wagon picking up bags of grass and leaves to use as mulch in the garden. So I loved it. So he gave me a little patch of land My grandpa had an old wagon. We painted it green, like you're wearing green today, my favorite color. And I grew a vegetable garden, and that's how I started. I used to sell vegetables to my neighbors, and then I also had a paper route. And it all started because my dad was they never gave allowance. You had to earn your money. I mean, I didn't live a bad life. I lived a good life, but nonetheless.
You are living in Connecticut.
Yeah, exactly. And so I earned my own money, and I grew up that nobody owes you anything and you owe no one anything. You work for it.
You got you became that instilled an ambition in you to earn stuff.
I always worked from the beginning and always enjoy working.
You know, you can do that same scenario with another child and it won't work. It'll make them mad. And then you can have another kid who's given everything and they still end up ambitious. Because I always if you look at, there's a lot of, who's the guy that's on the Today? Okay, forget it. I'm going to go off on a wild tangent. Skip all of that. When you go to edit this, Tom, just cut all of that out for the Friday show. So you grew up on the East Coast. Your father was an actuary and a bond daddy, it sounds like. You had a greenhouse in your backyard. You have an innate passion for gardening that was like a lifelong goal. Did you go to school for horticulture?
Well, I did go to Oxford, England, but I went to architecture, landscape design. So I did not go to a horticultural school, though.
So you went to Oxford, England to an architectural landscape design. Is that like a 2-year program?
Yes, 2-year program.
Is that what you would recommend to other people?
I mean, there's so many great programs here in the United States now, and I think we have one locally. So it's a great experience because, there you study at actual gardens. You walk through and you learn their philosophies behind it. It's much more than just plant design and plant knowledge. It's really about the principles of design. Then you come back to the U.S. where you learn plant knowledge. I just got it from working in nurseries. And, of course, my dad has a passion for plants too. So I picked it up from him. And the coolest thing is on weekends when I was a kid, me and my dad would visit nurseries and he put in a little shells in my window to grow house plants. And I always made money doing it. So
you remind me so much of P.O. and Smith. Are y'all best friends?
No.
Doesn't everybody ask you that?
Everyone
y'all have so much
compares
in
us,
common. No, y'all have so much in common.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he went to school in Europe.
That's
to
what
Cambridge.
I was going to say.
I know. We're very parallel lives. And then when I started horticare, me and my dad started horticare, we bought the old Burnham Woods, which was P. Allen's. It's freaky how it all works out. But we do not socialize at all, believe it or not.
You should. Y'all could probably become best friends that could probably talk forever and ever and ever. It's like Fletcher Ford and Steve Landers.
Yeah.
Both love racehorses, and their wives told them to get together and talk to each other. And they were like, what would I do that for? He's my competitor. And then they got together and they're best friends. They talk on the phone every day. Your lives are so parallel.
See, I would be that way because I do not have an ego where that would intimidate me at all, or I'd think that we're competitors. I think we both have the same passion.
You would probably grow. You'd probably get together and feed off of each other and grow your ideas. You'd have somebody like-minded person. So, how did you end up in Little Rock, Arkansas?
Well, coming from Connecticut, I moved just a few times. So we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, for 1.5 years, and then from there we moved to Little Rock, and we lived in Little Rock for about 3.5 years, and then we moved to San Diego.
Good night, nurse.
We kept going west.
Why did your daddy, was it all for careers?
Every time he moved, he got a better job.
Wow. All right. This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with entrepreneur and landscape designer, Mr. Chris Olsen. We'll talk about the business of gardening, the passion of plants, his love of color, and my favorite subject, the saving of the 1927 Edgemont home in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Stay tuned. More to come.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. Over 40 years ago, with only $400, Kerry founded Arkansas Flag and Banner. During the last 4 decades, the business has grown and changed, along with Kerry's experience and leadership knowledge. In 1995, she launched the business website, flagandbanner.com, became an early blogger in 2004, founded the nonprofit Friends of Dreamland Ballroom in 2009, began distributing a biannual publication called Brave Magazine in 2014, and today she's branched out into this very radio show, YouTube channel, and podcast. Each week, you'll hear her engage in candid conversations with her guests about real-world experiences on a variety of businesses and topics that we hope you'll find interesting, educational, and motivational. Stay informed about upcoming guests by subscribing to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy's YouTube channel. For updates of happenings on the busy Flag and Banner campus, like Dreamland Ballroom events, current UIYB guests, sales at flagandbanner.com, relevant Brave magazine articles, and Kerry's weekly blog post, join our email list at flagandbanner.com and receive our Thursday, very popular, all-inclusive Water Cooler Weekly update. Telling American-made stories, selling American-made flags. TheFlagandBanner.com. Back to you, Kerry.
Thank you, son. Great. You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with Chris Olsen, owner of the historic Edgemont home and founder of Botanica Gardens and Plantopia Home and Garden Center in Central Arkansas. Before the break, we talked about Chris's life in Connecticut, his passion for plants, his father's orchard in his backyard, his going to school for architectural, gardening, landscaping. I'm not sure how to say that in England.
Landscape design?
Huh?
Landscape design? Is that
There's
what you
Landscape design.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
good. Thanks. Sure. Thank you. Thank you, child. And
Make it simple.
and now let's talk about Botanica Gardens and how did it come to be? And did you make that word up? Is it Botanica?
Botanica without the L.
You did make that word up.
Well, it's been around, but yeah.
You're like a rapper. He just makes up words. What year did you start Botanica?
I started Botanica in 2003.
Oh, okay. What services? Why did you start it? What came about? How did the events happen?
Well, originally I had Horticare, which was, I was in business with my dad. We both were 50-50 in that.
Your business was Horticare?
Yeah.
I did not.
It was called
know.
Doramus Landscape, and then I changed it to Horticare.
I remember that. Where
When we
was
did
it?
It was on Stagecoach, which my brother now owns. So he still has Horticare.
You're exactly like Deanna Smith.
I know. It's spooky because
I'm putting
their
y'all
brothers.
together.
I know.
We're gonna have dinner. Put it on the calendar. I'm getting y'all together. All
I
right,
would
go
do
ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, long story short is we were going to open a second location, and we did in the Heights area where we're looking for a kind of a garden boutique, a little bit more California, fun and funky kind of thing. And so I also had two partners at that time. We started it, and now I'm the only owner of it.
And did you have a falling out?
No. But, it's my passion. It wasn't their passion.
Right.
So it worked out.
You're also a decorator known for your use of color and produce a Today's Home segment that is seen in 33 states. You're a lifestyle expert. What is that?
The show,
Uh-huh.
it's called Today's Home with Chris Olsen, and it's lifestyle segments, and it's anything to do with your lifestyle. I mean, from cooking to gardening, to interior design, all different things. I mean, I just talk about whatever.
And it's how many minutes or?
Well, they're segments. They're like 1.5 to 2 minute segments. So, and what happens is, different stations, not different networks, purchase them and they use them wherever they want to. So I had a friend in Florida we're just talking about who just was getting a haircut and he heard my voice and NBC was using it. So, it just depends whoever uses it and buys it.
How do you, get people to pick that up?
I started with Channel 11, so
In the garden.
in the garden. So they purchased those segments. We produced them. Me and Scott Romano, who's my camera guy, we produced them. They bought them and they used it for fillers in their shows. And because of that, then, another one of our general manager from here moved and he started showing them in North Carolina and it just got.
Now I've seen you live on In the Garden, but you actually do.
No, I pre-tape segments.
I just think you're live in the garden, maybe.
Oh, no. When I'm at Channel 11, that is all live except for I do the Vine now. I'm privileged that they give me that. And I do one Thursday a month live. The rest of them are pre-taped.
How do you find time to garden, design, entertain in your home, be on TV? Because going on those segments takes preparation.
Yes.
It's not like you're just going to show up.
No, I mean, you gotta make those projects and make sure they work first. And then you have to recreate them on air.
How much do you sleep?
You know what? I only need about 5 hours of
There
sleep.
it is.
I know I'm an early riser because I hate to waste a morning. I wake up at 4:30 or so. I work out first.
You look like it.
And then I go and do my thing. But by 9:30, I'm in bed reading.
At night.
But when I fall asleep, I am dead to the world.
Where did you also have a furniture and plant brand called
Hemajang. Well, you're talking about making up words.
This is the weirdest word. You're going to have to spell it for everybody.
Hemajang is JH. The J is silent. So
yeah.
JH.
Thanks for nothing. Thanks for nothing, Chris.
Well, it looks good. So it's JHEMAJANG. Hemajang. And I swear.
I love it.
No, you do not.
It rolls off. It's going to be in the dictionary one day.
Okay.
I'm here for it.
And I just started using it. It was funny. I was filming for Leisure Arts when they were doing all their DVDs, and I was doing a couple DVD lines for them. And we had a producer that came down, I think from California, and she was exhausted. And anyhow, so we're filming, and I said, all you got to do is just hemajang it together, and it just all works. And I swear I've been using it for years and never knew I made it up until that point. She stopped, the camera. What in the world is hemajang? She might have used other words, but because we're just tired. And I said hemajang, and I realized that was the first time that I realized I made it up. If you talk to my friends, they will tell you I make up a lot of words.
Why does it start with J?
I don't know. It just happened that way. So hemajang, this is how I define it. So, and I trademarked it. So that's my plant line and my furniture line are trademarked. So hemajang is the art of mixing it up. It's taking items that are related and unrelated and mixing them up in such a fun, funky way that it just works. And that's hemajang. We all hemajang. We just didn't know it.
Sounds like a dance move to me. Do you ever get creatively stifled where it's just hard to keep coming up with ideas?
Not yet.
Really?
Do I worry about it? Yes.
Do you really?
I really do. I've learned my most creative time is when I fly on a plane. No distractions. There's nothing there but you. And I call my thinking book.
Are you alone on that plane?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, like, with other passengers.
Yeah. And you say there's no distractions and you're sitting.
Well, I mean, there's no distractions because you're just sitting there. I take a nap in the beginning and then I have my book and I start doodling and then it just comes out of me.
All the people around you aren't driving you nuts?
No, I block them out.
Wow, I wish I could do that. So that's your most creative, and you get your book out and you just start writing stuff
and
down.
then I'll design Christmas things, clients' places, my home. I just come up, it just pops in my head like the logo for Plantopia. I love that. I was going to hire someone to do it, to design it, and it was too expensive. I was at the light in Chenal, and it hit me. Yin yang, the leaves, two leaves go in different directions, and that's how I did the logo. I tell myself, don't worry about it. It will come to you when you least expect it, and usually that's when it happens. But I have to write it down. Sometimes I'll forget.
Oh, yeah. I've been to your place. You've got fairy gardens, pot faces, air plants. I don't even know what those are.
Phalaenzias. They grow in trees on the bark without much of a root system.
And Arkansas orchids.
We do. We have a Arkansas grower of orchids. But the Botanica Gardens is very well known for their orchids. And we ship from California. I mean, you order it that afternoon, they're there that morning. That's how fast it comes. They're fresh.
Orchids have an interesting story that goes behind them. They used to be worth thousands of dollars. People used to collect them. They were like, only people that could get them were rich people.
Tropicals were the sign of wealth. You had palm trees and pots it was a wealthy home. And now that everybody has that.
All right. Tell us. You told us how you came to own Plantopia Home and Garden Center, but you didn't tell us where the name came from.
I don't even remember how I came up with that, but I remember I did, and I just wanted something different, and then it just popped into it. Botanica Gardens, something that wasn't in Arkansas already.
No Plantopia.
No Plantopia did not come to my mind then. Mm-mm.
No, but when you came up with the name Plantopia, how did you come up with that name?
just thought of utopia, and then because plants are to me are a yin yang type of thing, so I just came up with
How many
Plantopia.
employees do you have?
I have probably with all the companies a little over 50.
Who hires and manages them?
I have great managers.
Okay.
So like my maintenance division, I have a residential manager, I have a commercial manager. They hire their employees. I hire the managers, and then each store, each manager hires the employees.
What's the difference between your Little Rock store, Botanica Gardens, and your North Little Rock store, Plantopia?
Botanica Gardens is probably, it's a little bit more of a boutique store. It's bigger than people think it is, because when you walk in it and you go outside, you can't believe how large it is. Because it's smaller and it's in a condensed area, in the Heights, it has very cool, fun, funky things, a lot of one-of-a-kind things. And then Plantopia is acres, so it's much larger. And it gets more into all the different types of plant material, shrubs and trees.
Bushes and stuff.
Yeah, and stuff like that. As Botanica has some, but we specialize in more specialty plants there.
So speak to the challenges that faces a company when you have perishable merchandise and it's seasonal.
That's the part I hate.
You are just ready. How do you prepare for a slow season?
You do reserves. And
what does that mean?
Cash reserves.
Oh.
You do that, and really mostly services. So Botanica has a big size landscape firm and maintenance. So that's year round. So that is our saving grace. Technically, that's where I make really more of my money is doing that.
What about gearing up for the busy season? Your managers do that. They're like, do you go to market?
I'm the only one that goes to market. I just know what I like. And we have similar items in both stores, but then they also carry different items.
Looks like you're into butterflies this year.
So my manager just said that at Plantopia. She said, how many butterflies did you buy?
Yeah.
I go, apparently my gut said it's the year of the butterflies.
It's pretty.
Well, let's hope so.
And then you've got a lot of faces, pot faces.
Yes, that is a big thing. And I really expanded that line. We sell lots of pot faces. They have personality.
They make you happy.
They make you happy.
All right. This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with landscape designer, entrepreneur, lifestyle expert, Mr. Chris Olsen. We'll be answering gardening questions and talk about his recent renovation project. In 2016, Chris bought the Justin Matthews Jr. home in North Little Rock, Arkansas, called the Edgemont. He has since rehabbed it to create a spectacular masterpiece of this 1927 Spanish colonial home. And you can see it. We'll hear about its public usage for weddings and corporate meetings. Can't wait to talk about the renovate. I want to remind everyone we're broadcasting live every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time on 101.1 The Answer and Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy's Facebook page. Also on Fridays, the show is rebroadcasted on KABF 88.3 at 2 p.m. And podcasts are made available on all popular listening sites and our YouTube channel. And if you have a question for Mr. Olsen, stay tuned. Hotline phone number when we come back.
Song to the Obamas at the inaugural ball. Etta James sang it on the Dreamland Ballroom stage.
It's got to come on.
Earpieces.
Oh! Yeah, that's over. This one's doing fine.
Nice ball last time.
I don't know why this one's, there's always one, isn't there? Hey, Facebook people, are y'all going to call in?
Please do.
Please do.
You know, people always call in for gardening shows. They're like, I've got a bush dying in the backyard.
Hey, man.
We used to do that in the oldies. It was called Dig That Friday. And I would come in on Fridays and I would answer garden questions.
Did you get a bunch of them?
Yes.
People are always calling.
And it was fun.
You liked it.
Yeah, I really did. You're always afraid they're going to ask one hard one you can't answer.
Well, you just have to.
I said, call Janet Carson.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, people called in about like a million Craig Myrtle questions for Janet Carson.
Ah, I bet.
Like, always.
All right, here we go. You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm Speaking today with Mr. Chris Olsen, owner of the historic Edgemont home and founder of Botanica Gardens and Plantopia Home and Center in Central Arkansas. If you have a question or comment for Chris, you may call
501-823-0965.
Give it again, Greg Ray.
The number is 501-823-0965.
Oops. Did I just lapse back into childhood with you?
Sure did.
I was going to say something, but
Great,
I'm not shut.
The joys of working with your mother.
Sorry. Before this, we talked about the business of owning your own plant store and the risk taking that he does, and a little bit about education and how he how Chris Olsen became passionate about what he's doing. But let's talk gardening tips now. Changing for the season is a lot of work. Knowing when to prune, when to fertilize is tricky business. I just burnt a plant up in my house with Miracle Grow this past winter.
Which means you got to buy a new one now, right?
Oh.
See, it's not always a bad thing.
What a business owner right there. But pruning is tricky because you can cut the buds off, the flowers off. So how do you recommend people keep up with that? Do you have a gardening calendar?
Well, yes. I mean, and of course we have the website now with, not the website, but the internet, which gives you a lot of month to month, hints and things to do. But there's a general rule. So when it comes to pruning, usually if it's a spring bloomer, an azalea, anything that blooms in the spring, you normally prune it after it blooms and starts to flush out, never before. And usually you stop pruning that in July. Because if you do that and you trim them back in July, they still have a month or two to grow back, and they'll bloom off of that growth. But if you bloom them too late in the season, and since they bloom on new wood and new growth, then you sacrifice the flowers. That's the general rule.
So spring flowers,
after they bloom and flush out,
only put flowers on new growth.
Most do. Some bloom on. They have new hybrids now that do both.
What about winter? What about all my hollies and?
Oh, well.
Because that's what everybody's doing right now.
Sure. I mean, you can prune those in the South, majority any time of the year. Just don't prune them heavily in the wintertime. Because if you remember, it's an evergreen hollies and they produce what? Food with the green leaves. If you cut them way back, there's no way for them to produce any food because they're not going to flush out for a couple months. And the plant can starve that way. So the general rule is you can prune them lightly, but not too heavy.
So my red tip patine is my, what's the nandinas that I have?
Yes.
Those I think you have to prune right now because they put their berries on.
Yes, correct. You would sacrifice once they bloom. If you trim them before that, then they don't have berries.
Mm-hmm. It's spring. What should we all be doing right now?
This is the time to get your yards ready. I mean, you should have by now cut your liriape back, crepe myrtles back. It's not too late for some things. And this is the time to clean out the leaves and rebark your beds before everything flushes out like crazy. It's easier to rebark before plants flush out.
Oh, so we should be cleaning our beds, putting down new bark. Why is bark so good for gardens?
It's organic. It rots. So it really does condition a bed. It does two things. It does a couple things. First of all, it conditions the soil over time. That's why you want to mulch it every year because it rots. Put it on thick. We put it on at least 3 inches thick because if you put it on light, it's going to be gone in a couple months with all of our humidity and rain. It also keeps weeds at bay because it smothers weeds out, and weed seeds germinate with light. And if you bury them under mulch, they won't germinate at all. And it conserves moisture. It really does cut down on watering.
Is there a mulch that you prefer?
Yeah.
Or which one?
There's hardwood mulch, and there's double hammered and single hammered and so on. At Plantopia, we sell one that's a single hammered, but it's not too chunky, but it's not too fine. A lot of people like fine mulch, but if it's already really fine, it's going to rot very quickly. And it washes very quickly. So you want something with a little bit more chunk to it, and that's single hammered mulch.
Single hammered? What's that mean? Is that cedar? What is that?
They churn it at the lumber yards. They turn it once or twice, which means that it's still chunky and it's not fine. The more they churn it in there, whatever you call the things.
We used to all get cedar mulch. You can't hardly find that anymore.
You can find it somewhere. It just costs more.
Why did we quit using cedar mulch? I thought that kind of chased bugs away also.
Well, there's some truth to that, and there's some myth to that. People think hardwood mulch actually brings insects and stuff like that. Any organic matter can. even cedar mulch. But I think it's more the cost and the availability of it. Yeah, hardwood mulch is much more available from lumber yards.
Is cedar in, is it threatened or something? I mean, we run out of cedar trees.
I don't know if it's to be honest, I don't know. I really think it's cost. If you need 12 yards of mulch, you're going to go for the cheaper one.
Mm-hmm.
Saves money. So
my husband's going to be mad about this question because he's a grass man, but are grass yards passe?
No, my other house, I had no lawn. That was only because I had too many trees. But this house, I have a much bigger lawn. No, the lawns are coming back. If it's just
takes a lot of watering. Of course, that doesn't matter in Arkansas.
Technically, a lawn is less maintenance than a flower bed because you just mow it. As beds, you have to weed it all the time. You have to mulch them. You have to trim what's in it. And a lawn, it can be less maintenance. If you have a chemical program, don't have weeds in it, it's less maintenance.
So I had a chemical program for my husband, St. Augustine, and we put this, but a broadleaf that weed killer, broadleaf weed killer, ended up killing the trees.
There you have to be very careful with chemicals. There is what's called chemical drift. So if you in the fumes of it, which can injure plants, like we've had clients' houses last year for some reason. We had a lot of clients whose plants were mutated. Their oak trees were mutated. Everything around all the bushes around the trees were mutated.
What do you mean mutated?
The leaves curled up, and you can tell something was wrong, and they're defoliated. And majority of the time, that's a chemical drift. Somewhere a neighbor sprayed or a chemical company sprayed, and it drifted in the wind, and it can be very toxic to other plants if it's not applied correctly.
Well, I went to the extension office and found out that trees are broadleaf and that when you put down a broadleaf killer in your yard over and over and over, you end up killing your trees.
Yeah.
How far out should you mulch your tree to kind of prevent that from happening?
In the best world, you should come out about 5 foot or so, to the tree line, to the tree drip line of a tree. That's ideally would be the best, but that would be big tree rings. It's all how it's applied, when it's applied, if it's applied correctly, what you apply. So for me, technically, I think it's better to hire a professional company to spray than for you to do it yourself. Because for me, I don't like to deal with chemicals. I just don't. We need them, but I don't like to touch them.
Do you, what do you get asked about the most?
Growing marijuana. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I have been asked that, though.
I didn't expect that. I had like bees, chickens, flower garden, vegetable garden, marijuana garden.
Oh, what would be God, that's a good question. Probably what plants provide the most color and what kind of color combos look the best.
Okay. What?
Everyone has a different flavor, but I believe that if you add 3 colors together, like a seasonal color, it complements each other and brings out more color. If you start to go too much beyond that, it looks confusing to the eye.
More than 3. Don't do more than 3.
Well, you can. I mean, I'm addicted to plants, so I love color. But usually when I design, a certain area, I try to stick with 3 colors.
And do you like let's say for spring, what's your favorite color for spring?
It's hard to limit myself to
3.
color.
Give me 3.
Well, of course, yellow is one of my favorite colors.
For summer?
Yeah.
For
I love
spring.
Orange for summer. I love hot oranges and stuff for summer. I like rich, hard, intense colors for summer and more pastel-y stuff, soft colors for the springtime. I love pinks. I
love pink.
That's a guy color now too. And
that's all I want to plant is pink and purple.
I really do love pinks.
I don't like red in the summer. It makes me hot.
Red is not one of my favorite colors when it comes to plants. And I didn't think about it just now. I don't really buy many red plants. I don't like red pansies. I think they're dull. They don't have they're not vibrant. So I always add yellow because yellow is the one color that seems to complement all of the colors.
Oh, interesting.
It really highlights everything.
So I would have never thought to put yellow and pink, but I bet yellow, pink, and purple would be really pretty.
Beautiful. Well,
because purple and yellow are lovely together.
I think yellow is the first color your eye's attracted to.
Really?
You notice it. That's why I use it in commercial properties because it brings people into their signage. And it brings them to the signage. Maybe they're going to rent an apartment. If they rent an apartment, what are they going to do? Spend more money on landscaping. So it all works out.
He's always thinking. Do you prefer plants in pots or in the ground? Because you use a lot of pots. And what do you think about that?
Both. I love containers. I like big pots because the larger the pot, the less maintenance it usually is because the less watering you have to do, the better the plants do.
Oh.
And I shove and cram my pots full of plants.
In a big pot.
Oh, yeah. Bigger the better. But they always say it's true.
What's the number one mistake home gardeners make?
No. Watering, probably.
Over or under?
Both. You know, the problem is, here's what happens. They can't read a plant. You have to read a plant. So if it's wilting, what do? You water it. And then if it's still wilting, you water it again. And then you water it. Well, then it's drowning.
Yeah.
So if a plant doesn't pop up and still wilting, it's overwatered. And once a plant is overwatered, what happens is the root system is suffocating. Once a plant starts to suffocate, it usually never will rebound. But if it dries out, and not too bad, but dries out, it usually can rebound. So you rather underwater than overwater.
Interesting. So I water my house plants once a week, except for the orchid. I do the same thing once a month. I order that orchid and the Christmas cactus once a month, and then everything else once a week.
It comes with time. So Sunday is my chore day. So Sundays I water all my plants. It takes me like 2 hours to water my inside. I got a lot of plants, but I can read them. If it looks moist, I might just give it a little bit of water. But then, you have other houseplants that dry out every week and you have to give them more. So you just have to watch what they're telling you. If they're starting to defoliate and they're dry too much, they're stressing too much, you need to water it more.
That is so true. Some people cannot read a plant at all.
Not at all. And some people are intimidated by it. So we have moisture meters. It's great. You stick it in there. It tells you if it's dry, moist, or wet.
Oh.
It helps out a lot of people.
Climate change. Is there anything we're doing different? Because this year's been exceptionally rainy, and it seems like it has been a lot lately.
I can tell you, so many people say or don't believe in climate change. And I can't say, scientifically. But I remember when I first moved to Arkansas in 92, I couldn't wear shorts usually past mid-October because it really started freezing frost. Now I wear it almost to mid to end of November. So something has changed.
Well, it's so wet this season, and it's been so wet for so many, every year. It's been really, really wet.
It's hard for me in my business because when it's cloudy and rainy, they don't come shopping. But I look at it this way. I much rather have us have too much water than too little water.
So you're not changing anything about the way you're doing business based on has our zone changed? Has Arkansas's planting zone changed?
We're 7, and we're kind of like 7.5 here. They changed it one time to 8, and they brought it back down. So
8 being warmer.
Yeah, what has happened is this is what has changed. Everything comes in earlier now. You never bought until mid-April. That was the way it is. And that changed not only because of the weather, but then you have all these discount stores, and everyone's trying to push plants out to get the market share in the beginning. It's like Christmas. It starts in July now. And technically our last day of frost in central Arkansas is historically April 15th. We could still have another frost. Now it doesn't look like it this winter because we haven't had a frost in almost 4 weeks. So it's a very mild winter, but everything is getting earlier. We're pushing it a little too much, and we have to push it because everybody else is pushing it.
Can we put our plants out on the porch now?
If it's a covered porch, yes. I think we're okay. I'm taking my big palms and stuff are being delivered from the greenhouses tomorrow to my house. I think we're going to be okay. But there is always that chance. We may have a frost, but I don't think it's going to be a low ground
Grandmother
frost.
always said never plant before Easter. And Easter is always based around the moon. So it changes.
She might know something.
She might know. Grandmother also
said.
But
no one's listening to Grandma right now.
Nobody listens to grandmothers anymore. Here's something else you might disagree with, and then we've got to move on because I want to talk about your house. Grandmother used to say that when you plant a plant in the ground, that you should always fill the hole with water to help with shock.
I don't do that because you can also drown a plant, but I do believe that you need to water a plant thoroughly. And I use what's called root hormone B1, a root stimulator, which helps heal the roots and gives them nutrients, etc. or a plant to really rebound fast.
Oh, root stimulator. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to tell everybody before we move on that you're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and that I'm speaking today with Mr. Chris Olsen, owner of the historic Edgemont home and founder of Botanica Gardens and Plantopia Home and Garden Center in Central Arkansas. He's a lifestyle specialist with with segments. What are your segments called?
Today's Home
that are seen in 33 states. He's got a great Facebook presence. He's got 5,000 followers. He posts live on it every week. I joined today. I recommend all of y'all join today. Now, first, before we move on to this question, I want to preface this next segment by telling our listeners that you bought the vacated 1927 Edgemont home on Skyline Drive in the historic Park Hill neighborhood in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and that the style of the architecture is Spanish colonial. Let's start with the home's history. Can you tell us about it?
Well, it was built in 1927. It was Justin Matthews Jr.'s home, personal home. And they actually started my neighborhood in Park Hill, which was called Edgemont. And that's why the house was called Justin Matthews Jr., which it still is, but I call it the Edgemont house. That's just my short term for it. Because of the history of the neighborhood. And
Edgemont neighborhood was to rival Edge Hill neighborhood in Little Rock?
Well, the street in Little Rock is Edge Hill. So Edgemont was supposed to be wealthy street. So, and they were trying to bring that to North Little Rock. Of course, when they built the house, my house was the first house built in the neighborhood, one of the first houses built in the neighborhood. And, of course, soon afterwards, the Depression came and that changed everything in the neighborhood.
Did they lose their home?
They lost their home. The house has been foreclosed on several times.
How many owners has it had?
I'm the 9th owner.
Did you worry about that?
Well, some neighbors call it the white elephants because 3 people have died in the house, including the last owner. And all of them young. One was 23, one was in their 50s, the other in the 40s. So,
are you checking your pulse every day? Your blood
here's
pressure.
The funny thing. When I started working on the house, you're talking about stress. I had a major colon infection. What the doctor said, you have too much stress. And that's when I learned to reduce my stress. And I thought, oh my God, because I never get sick. It is happening. But since then, everything's been good.
Have you had anybody come in with like a priest come in?
No.
Why not?
But when I was so busy, so busy with work in the house, I never thought about the deaths in the house being haunted. And people always told me the house was haunted until I almost moved in. And then it dawned on me, what if? Well, I can't afford to move now. I put too much into the house. So I had a slumber party the first night because I was not going to live in the house, sleep in the house alone the first night. And the house is very quiet. There is nothing that gives me that vibe.
That's nice. But just to get, if there is any juju, you said you took your mother over there.
I took my mom over there in the very beginning before I bought it. And she looked at me, she goes, no. And I said, well, Mom, she goes, no. And it just would ponder. I love the house I lived in before I built it. It just pondered my mind. And I knew I would move. Only I knew because a house would find me. Because it wasn't for sale. It just pondered me. And I had to have it. And somehow, God's will, everything worked out the way it was supposed to be.
So you ended up moving.
I bought it in June of 2016. It took months to negotiate with the daughters. I almost backed out. And then it all worked out. And then I moved in October 2016. We did a massive renovation with my guys from Botanica after hours.
What's the first thing you did?
First thing we did, well, the outside was the worst of the house because the house has no eaves. It had no gutters for 20-something years. So the water ran down the house. So we had to rebuild the majority of the windows.
Oh.
So we started on the outside first to get it dry. And then we moved on the inside.
I was surprised you didn't keep the front doors awning.
That wasn't there. There was no front door awning.
Oh.
Now, I have pictures from the 60s.
But I saw online.
Now, if there used to be lanterns and everything in front, all that was gone. There was no light fixtures except for one broken lantern at the front door.
You used to entertain in your other house.
Yeah, all the time.
And before the show, I just tripped across a web video you did of taking people touring through your house, and you entertained there.
Yeah, I was only 2,000 square foot. It was in West Little Rock, and I did bus tours and everything. I didn't do weddings or anything like that, but I did bus tours
for people to come see your 2,000 square foot home.
Yeah. Well, it was the yard. It was amazing because when you came down, you drive through my neighborhood and you think, does Chris live here? Because it's just a regular neighborhood. And then you're in a cul-de-sac and my house was hidden. All you could see was one garage door and no one knew where they're going. And that didn't make sense where they were. And then when they got out and walked through the gates and into the house in the backyard, it was almost an acre. It changed everyone's mind.
What your neighbors think when busloads would pull up of people?
Well, I had great neighbors in the cul-de-sac.
I'll say.
But that's why I ended up moving because the city of Little Rock was trying to prevent me from having tours. And the funny thing was there were Little Rock tours. but anyhow, because, it's a residential neighborhood. So when I bought the edge of my house, that was a concern of mine and the neighbors. And we're very conscientious of the neighbors and parking. But the city of North Little Rock had a emergency legislative meeting and voted into law that anyone in North Little Rock that has a historical home with certain regulations can open it up for tours.
Did they do that because of you?
I think that was a big influence.
I'm so glad you saved this house. Tell everybody how many square feet it is.
It is, I enclosed parts of it. It's almost 8,000 square feet.
Can you imagine taking care of an 8,000 square foot home? How many bathrooms does it have?
6.
Bedrooms?
It has 4 upstairs.
The outside, when the house was built, there was no such thing as landscaping.
No, it was just a hedge against the front of the house.
If people had crepe myrtle, or had azaleas in their front yard, it was like, oh, look at the azaleas. Today,
It's pretty packed. People call it the North Little Rock Botanical Garden because, it really technically, I got every type of plant you can imagine.
So you do tours.
Yeah.
You do weddings.
We do lots of weddings.
How do people find out about it?
Word of mouth now. Of course, we advertise and stuff like that.
You got a website?
Yeah, it's the edgemonthouse.com.
The edgemonthouse.com. I recommend go there, take his virtual tour. It'll blow you away. I can't wait to come to a party there sometime and
I will
see
have you. And we're doing a tour in May, I think May 9th, assuming everything's okay with everything that's going on today. And that's a spring tour.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
It's on the website.
Mm-hmm. If I wanted to get a landscape design from your team, what's the first thing I would do?
I am the only landscape designer at Botanica Gardens. So you just call Botanica Gardens and it's a free appointment and I come out and meet you and we just go from there.
Out of all the stuff you do, which seems like way too much to make money at, which one is your most profitable?
Landscaping.
The design?
Installation.
The installation of landscaping. You got a great team. Get in there and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, thank you for sharing your story. I have a gift for you.
You do?
It's a garden banner.
All right.
Of course.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I love it.
You have to have a garden banner stand.
Okay, yes. I was going to say, how am I going to hang this?
Right here.
All right.
Garden banner stand.
I'm going to hang it with pride.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed talking to you. I can't wait to see what you do next.
You never know, because I don't know. So.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome, because your continued success is so much fun. I love it. Gray, who's coming next week? Or is it not really next week? I think it's in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. We're doing a rerun next week. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have a new interview with Governor Mike Beebe.
And we're going to do it
over the telephone.
I know.
Yeah, phone interview.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Keeping our distance.
Yeah.
To all, thank you for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. Until then, be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture of Kerry's face in the center of the screen. To watch the full-length interview, click the video in the top right. For more interview highlights, click the video in the bottom right. Thank you for watching.